What's going on, everybody? My name is Niels, or Guns for Hire, whatever floats your boat, and today we're going to be talking about the Xbox One used game fees, dedicated servers, and a patent that was submitted by Microsoft back in November that potentially turns the Kinect sensor into a type of spyware. Now we're going to start off with the used game fees because a lot of this information, again, as I mentioned yesterday in the vlog, we don't have a lot of confirmation, but I've come across a few articles, and of course everything that I'm going to talk about I will try and remember. If it's not in there, then just remind me on Twitter to put the links to those articles in the description below, because it's very important that you know that I'm not just pulling ideas out of the air here. I read a lot of articles and I try and bring that information together, because a lot of times if you just read one, you assume that's the truth, and then you're ignoring all these other corrections like, no, what we meant was this or that. So it's very, very important. Now let's talk about the used game fees. This has been something that's been ongoing. This is something that not just Microsoft, but Sony as well have been, and actually beyond the console owners, Sony and Microsoft, even developers like EA using the online pass. So when you buy a used game, in order to access online multiplayer, you had to pay a fee of like $10 or $15. So even if you bought it used at, say, GameStop or whatever, when you came home, in order to access it, the multiplayer aspect, you had to pay an additional $10, $15. And depending on the price of that used game, could bring it up pretty close to actually a new game cost. What Microsoft, based on this article, and this is, oh, I can't even remember his name, but it's actually one of the executives, Microsoft executives, that has actually mentioned this. And he's very, again, he's not, there's no official statement, but the way he brings it across is kind of like, well, I guess so. Yeah, I guess if it's that particular scenario, this is what will happen. So I'm going to do my best to try and give you a non-biased. I don't really care. I don't buy used games, so for me it is as non-biased as possible. Okay, I'm getting both systems, just to clarify here, so I don't, I want to be able to play games on both systems. With Microsoft's used games, and this is what he was stating, is that used games, this may actually have a huge impact on the used game market, particularly for companies like GameStop. It may kibosh them big, huge wrench in there. And this is what he said. What I've extrapolated from it as well is that the person buying the second game, so say you bought a game brand new, you paid whatever, 60 bucks, let's just say 60. It was a good deal, or it wasn't like super expensive. $60 for a new game. When you go and say you gave this disc to your buddy, and your buddy now wants to go online and activate it, when he installs that game on his system, it actually uninstalls it, and I'm assuming it uses the cloud service. That's why all this cloud services probably, and this connection, this online connection, this once every 24 hours sort of rumor that's going around may be justified. Because based on what he said is that when you activate a used game on your system, whoever the original owner of that game is, and I have no idea how they actually do that, maybe there's some coding, maybe it's an actual, I have no idea. I don't know, because we don't have the information out there. But this is what was said, is that it uninstalls it from their system and installs it on your system. But here's the big kicker, is that the price of it, if you're going to actually install it, it's not a $10 or $15 fee, because what he said was, it's the price, what you will pay as a used game owner, you will pay whatever the cost of that original game disc was. Maybe later on in the year when it's really cheap, if someone bought it for 20 bucks, then you would pay 20 bucks. But if someone bought it brand new for 60, if you're gonna buy the game off them at that time, it's gonna cost you 60 for that used game. This is absolutely crazy. Like, that just squashes used game. The whole point of used game is discount. A lot of us, when I was younger, getting Nintendo games, I would fill boxes with Nintendo games because I'd go out to the marketplace and I'd buy used games and they would be cheap as heck, but I would build this library. Now what based on this article is that the used game will cost whatever the previous owner paid for that game. I don't know how they're gonna do that. I don't know how they're gonna implement that, but that essentially kiboshes that. That means, like, if you own that game and you wanted to sell it, you really can't, because what's the point? If you had a new game and the person who's buying it off you has to pay the same price you did, which is brand new, if it's $60 in the store, they have to pay $60 to activate that used game. The used game. That means if the person selling it to you, even for $1, essentially you're paying Retail price plus $1. Why would you even do that? It doesn't make sense. No matter what, it doesn't make sense to buy a used game if you're going to have to pay the original price. You might as well go in the store and buy it new. Why would you pay for a used game the actual retail price plus $1? It doesn't make sense. Even when the price comes down, like, oh, well, later on the year, it's only $20. So now it's cheaper, but you still can't charge anything for it. You can't go in there and say, here, you know, here's the disc, it'll be $5. Well, then that's $5 on top of what the current price is in the store. It never ends. Now here's the upside, and this is where we don't have the information, so this may actually improve as well, is that Sony, or Microsoft rather, has alluded to the fact that there's going to be some sort of online used trade-in system. We have no details on that. What I'm assuming, and this is pure assumption here, is that they're going to be able to provide you with some sort of money back, you know, Microsoft points or whatever the case may be. So essentially, they've taken that used game market out from GameStop and taken it for themselves. They're basically saying, no, 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 you're no longer going to be in control of the used game, because every time GameStop sells used games, neither the developers of the game nor the actual companies like Sony or Microsoft make a single penny on it. They make it from the original transaction of the new game, but GameStop, that's why it's such a huge industry for GameStop. Their used game business is monstrous because it's pure profit for them. You know what I mean? Not a single penny. They don't go like, oh, Microsoft, here's your share, and developers, here's your share for the used game. It doesn't work like that. So Microsoft has said, no, 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 we're taking that back from you. You're not going to make any money from the used game, at least based on this information. Again, these are assumptions. So Microsoft, you may be trading, and maybe this is how the connection happens. It says, you know what, I own this. You know I own this because it's been installed on my system. I use my activation key or whatever it is that they provide you with. It's on the cloud server, and you're like, you know what, I've given this game up. So here it is, here's the game. They'll uninstall that game from your system, and maybe there's a key on all of these, you know, maybe it's right on the disc itself. This particular disc, here's the code. So that when you give it to your friend to actually purchase, he enters in the code and is able to actually buy it, and maybe at a discount. But based on the article, I don't even think it's a discount. I mean, I think the original owner gets some money back from it from Microsoft. The beauty of this, oh my, I've got my cat going all berserk over here. So the beauty of this is that Microsoft, this isn't all now bad, and I'm assuming it's got to be like this, where that used game now, not only, it's not going to, I can't see Microsoft pocketing the entire amount. It's like saying, you know what, okay, here's the used game market, will still exist, maybe not the greatest prices, but we're going to be able to take some of that money from the used game world and distribute it to the developers and to ourselves as well. The companies that are actually bringing you the game, not the GameStops that are just milking the system, because it's like easy billion-dollar industry for GameStop, and Microsoft has essentially squashed that. Now keep in mind, we don't have all the details. I'm assuming that that's what's going to happen, because they do mention this online transaction, a way to sort of trade in your used games online. And that's the only way I could see it. I mean, why would you do it? If you're not going to get anything back, forget it. Like, what's the point of like, oh, here, Microsoft? But maybe that disc is dead if you don't. Maybe there's an activation key. I don't know how to do that, and I don't know if they can do that. That's kind of a headache. There's a lot of unknowns still. Looking at Sony as well, though, we still don't know the used game, because they were doing the same thing. Think about it, the PSN Pass. They're already in the same boat. Don't think that Sony is any different than Microsoft at this point here. It seems to be a movement within the developers, which means that Sony and Microsoft kind of have to embrace it, because the developers are even like, listen, we're sick of the, you know, losing money, whatever the case may be, of people, you know, giving all these used games around. So Sony, although it hasn't announced it, you can be guaranteed there's going to be something there. If Sony was smart, based on this information, based on what I've read so far, they would not do what Microsoft is doing. Again, we don't know. This isn't clarification. You know, this isn't verified in an official report. But do keep the PSN Pass. Charge a nominal activation fee, because that would actually keep the used game market for PlayStation games actually alive. If you're charging the same amount, so you know the Microsoft thing is buy it for $60 in the store. When you sell it to that person, they got to pay $60. It kills the used game. Why even do that? Why would you even buy a used game when you can go to the store and pay the same price for a brand new game? It's very, very dangerous. I know people will be trading it in to get some money back and everything. Maybe it discounts that game. Maybe the activation key associated with that disc will be a little bit cheaper. Who knows? We've got months left before it's unveiled. But again, you know, Sony's sitting back waiting and watching this. You can be guaranteed they're watching, seeing what's happening within this, or waiting for Microsoft to respond, because everyone is hammering them. It's almost like forcing Microsoft to give this up. And maybe they changed their strategy. Like, oh, we're not going to go quite to that limit, but we're still going to charge you a fee. It's just not going to be as, you know, as crazy high. So anyway, that's the used game fees. So definitely something there that's insane. It really is. I mean, the good thing is, you know, I guess that some of this money, if this works out somehow, when we get the details, that the developers are actually going to get some of that money from the used game rather than the GameStop. Sorry, GameStop, if, you know, anyone's watching this, I've got no love for you. You've made a ton of money off these games. This is them taking control back. You know what I mean? Whether it's going to the developers, I would much rather see a portion of the used game market going to the actual developers, the ones creating the game, the ones that you want to actually buy, the ones, you know, making the games, not just someone trying to make a buck. Although, you know, there's nothing wrong with business, but I just don't see a problem with that. So let's move on to the next one. This one is about dedicated servers. Now, there's a particular article that is out there right now on Wired.com that I did see other YouTubers talking about, and I read it. I read the thing, you know, I watched the actual presentation, I've looked on many other articles, and I can't fully agree with it. I think this is a lot of information, people making assumptions and spreading a lot of stuff, making everyone all excited when we have no concrete facts. And even within the same paragraph on Wired.com, which of course I will put the link in the description below and you can read it yourself, they talk about how, you know, the Xbox 360, I believe, started out with, what is it, 3,000? I think it was around 3,000 servers, and then right now, currently, they have around 15,000. What they're saying is the Xbox One will launch with 300,000 dedicated servers. Now, in Wired.com, they're like, this leads us to obvious conclusions. Read that. Be careful what you're reading. This isn't Microsoft telling you this. This is an actual media website making assumptions. They're saying 300. Well, that leads us to obvious conclusions. I don't think it's so obvious, but they're saying dedicated servers for every multiplayer game. Now, everyone's going crazy. There are other YouTubers reporting on this as well, saying, oh man, that's so good. You know, Call of Duty, dedicated servers, problem solved. I don't think so. If you read even further down in there, the the VP of marketing or the lead marketing guy, read this paragraph. Be very careful on how you read it. Don't ignore it. Don't get caught up. Be open-minded when you read it. This is the assumption made by Wired.com. If you read in there, the actual response is, you know, we'll be able to offload chunks of the game. These cloud servers aren't meant, it's not necessarily that every single game is going to be a dedicated server. They're saying, you know, most of these games, and they even say this in the article, saying that, you know, on day one, they probably won't be using them to their full capacity, but we're very excited to see how the developers use these, the servers. So it's not to say that they can't possibly do that sometime in the future, but it's saying, here's the possibility, here's the tools out there, see what you can do. No one's saying at all, no one has confirmed, neither Microsoft nor any of the developers said, you know what, our games are going to be using the Microsoft dedicated servers, and you're going to have dedicated service for every multiplayer game. No one is saying that except for Wired, and Wired's saying that based on assumptions. They're saying there's so many of them, but keep in mind as well, think about all of the services that Microsoft is implementing. The cloud service saves games, you know what I mean? It'll save your information on there, it alleviates certain things, and like they said in the actual article, bits and chunks of maybe, you know, something that's running in the background, physics or lighting or something of the actual game will be out there. Do you think that Call of Duty Ghosts is going to be running on dedicated servers right now? This technology, you know what I mean? And I've got an article, I may be even doing it tomorrow. I wanted to do it Monday through Friday, but this one's kind of a big one, and it irked me a little bit. I got irked. Ow, it irks. Talking about the Call of Duty Ghost engine. I may be doing that tomorrow as well. Yeah, a bit of juicy stuff here, but you know what I mean, in the development of Call of Duty Ghosts, do you think that all of a sudden they fully implemented and that it's going to be on dedicated servers? This isn't just like saying, you know, hey, here's a game, look, you know what, slap it on the server. Slap it on the 300,000 servers. No problem. It's a change in programming. The coding has to be changed. And then think about the porting to PC and PlayStation. PlayStation, keep in mind, does have Gaikai Cloud service as well. So it is a possibility. It's a possibility for multi-platform, and of course PC, well, of course you got access to cloud servers. That's not going to be an issue. This shouldn't be a hard thing to do. So you've got Microsoft and Sony already set up for cloud servers. We don't know how many servers the Gaikai represents for Sony. That information, they're very tight-lipped right now, so we don't know that. It is a possibility, and I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but there's no one has said it. Microsoft has not said that all multiplayer games are going to be on dedicated servers. No one. This is an assumption made by a reporting magazine, an online magazine, and then everyone's taking it on like, oh, thank goodness. It's a possibility, not a guarantee. So keep that in mind in terms of these dedicated servers. Think about all the other services that Microsoft is looking to implement. Of course you're going to want all these cloud servers. It's going to help it, and it's certainly going to potentially improve everything. But the way that they're saying is like, we're going to allow developers to offload chunks and bits of it to alleviate the processing required in the actual console. Not that everything, all the multiplayer is going to be just slapped on there. So that's one thing. And of course, the games, the Xbox Live experience, everything on their cloud servers. They want to make it seamless. They want to make it so that it's more powerful. But people are making assumptions here. You've just got to be careful. Wait for Microsoft to make the official announcement, because it may be very, very different from what you're hearing. Now, lastly, what I want to talk about is the Kinect sensor. Now, this one's, I'm not all, you know, brother spying on me, I don't like you, I want my privacy, but I know many of you are like that. I'm not actually overly concerned about this. I'm very open. I mean, I'm on the internet here. I share my name, you know, lots about me, so I don't, you know, I'm not hidden like, and I fuzz out my face or something like, hello, I am Voltron. So the Kinect, this patent that was submitted by Microsoft back in November, basically, it turns the Kinect into a monitoring service. And it kind of, I'm just saying, it kind of makes sense with this whole, you know, once every 24-hour online internet connection. Now it doesn't, you know, the system doesn't always have to be on, but everything up to this point, Microsoft is very wish-washy on this, but saying, no, not always on. And you know, I mentioned this before, just once every 24 hours. Basically, the Kinect will sense the number of people in the room, and if the number of people in the room for a particular application or whatever is being watched or viewed or played on that Xbox One exceeds the limit, the licensing limit for it, it can actually shut it down. The Kinect, and remember we heard also that the Kinect needs to always be connected. Now, we haven't heard anything to the contrary of that. At least I haven't. And if you do have something, please, by all means, let me know. But nothing to the contrary of the fact that the Kinect always needs to be connected to your Xbox One. It always needs to be there. No one's ever mentioned anything that. And then if you take that idea, once every 24 hours, Kinect always needs to actually be on the actual system. And then we've got this patent that actually monitors for licensing requirements. Now you may be wondering, well, what would they use it for? Certainly not games. No one really cares. There's no like limits or like, you're only allowed to have 4 people play a game at one time or else we're shutting it down on you. But think about this. Think about UFC fights. Think about big boxing matches where you're not allowed to use the stream. You're paying for, you know, and those are fees, like the pay-per-view fees. You're paying for private use of that footage. What it's basically doing is this Kinect essentially is like if you set it up in a bar and you've got like 200 people in the bar watching it and you're paying for a private viewing license, right? It's like maybe up to 6 people, 8 people in your family. But all of a sudden the Kinect sensor says, ooh, look, we've got about 100 warm bodies out there, license exceeded, done. Or saying, you know what, you've exceeded the license, please upgrade, forcing you to buy. It just makes sense to me. I was like, holy mackerel, put this, connect that dot, connect this dot. It may actually be true. At the same time, the reason why I'm not concerned about it is these are legalities. These are, you know, laws that have been in place for a long time. Technically, they always say, you're not allowed to publicly transmit this. This is something that cable companies pay millions of dollars for, to have the right to broadcast these things over, you know, the general public. So it's only, you know, for them, they're like, well, you know, just because you have an Xbox One doesn't mean you're allowed to take that and show it to 300 people in one room. That's not how it works. So the sensor will sense how many people are in there. If it exceeds the licensing requirements for whatever it is that you're trying to watch, it'll shut it down right on you. It doesn't sound like a conspiracy. It doesn't sound like anything. It just sounds like, you know, business implementation. I'm not saying it's not right. It is kind of spying, but at the same time, that information is being fed back. It's like monitoring your house. So think about it this way. If it does that, and you're not giving access, it's like Kinect is actually constantly monitoring who and, you know, how many people are in front of your Xbox every time that your Xbox is on, and that information is being fed back. It is constantly monitoring every house, millions of those consoles around the world. Microsoft, and whether or not they use it, I know it sounds like a conspiracy. I don't think they will. I don't see that way. I'm just saying the potential is there that it could monitor every single person in every home, and it knows how many people are there, how many people use it at all times, and that information is being fed directly back to Microsoft. Some people will have an issue with that. Me, like I said, I don't actually really care. You know what I mean? If I rent something like that, it's usually just my family. I'm not one of these people like, hey, you know what, I'm gonna get this and I'll show it to 300 people. I would never do that, I don't know, but I know there's businesses that will. And really for you and me, it may not affect it. Does it bother you that it's monitoring your living room all the time, that it's feeding this information back to Microsoft? Some of you, I know it will. I know some of you will get affected by this. Like you're feeling like your privacy is being invaded without you giving consent. But you can be guaranteed there's going to be some user agreement that allows it when you sign it. Read it. I'm going to be very curious when you first start up your Xbox One, if in that user agreement, in fine print, it's saying in blah, 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 you will know that the Kinect is monitoring. They have to do it legally or they're going to be in trouble. It's just a matter of finding it. So that's it today. Use game fees. We got to get some information on that. That's pretty crazy. The dedicated servers may not be dedicated for every single multiplayer online experience. It's a possibility, and it's a good one since Sony has Gaikai, but it's not verified. And remember, that statement is from an online gamer, okay? Microsoft has just said, oh, we can offload bits and chunks, and makes the whole online experience across the network, including all of the other services for Xbox Live, that much more fluid. Don't get caught up in it. Wait for this stuff. We get so much information, nothing really clarified. We get bits and chunks of information. Keep your mind clear. That's it. I'm Guns for Hire.